pretty Snapchat picture, I've been saying that there was somebody in the background here wearing red shorts. Pretty unique bracelet. Unique like the bracelet that Bart Jr. was wearing in that tattoo picture. And right here looks like it might be the tail end of a tattoo that wraps around the forearm. Carter, who trains in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And by Warren's own admission, his brother put someone in an arm bar.
When a boat takes on water 10 miles offshore, panic isn't a choice. It's closer to a physical law. In a 22-foot Triton, with a reportedly failed bilge pump, and the Gulf of Mexico rising over the gunnels, human beings don't typically sit calmly. They scramble. They bail. They drop to the floor, searching for the leak, reaching for life jackets, praying. The physics of a sinking vessel tend to demand chaos. But according to the account presented by Nolan Wells's friends, that chaos doesn't appear to have happened. We were told the boat was taking on water, but we were also told that no one was on the floor. No one was scrambling. No one was visibly panicking in the confined space of the hull. It's a claim that, on its face, is difficult to reconcile with the raw video footage of the distress call itself. Because when independent investigators slow that footage down, frame by frame, the official account starts to raise real questions. A limb appears to move on the deck when the tow strap goes taut. A figure seems to be positioned beneath the sightline of the camera. And the young men seated in front of interview cameras appear to pause, their eyes shifting towards something off-screen, as if waiting before they answer. You're watching Cold Case Watch Central. We track active cases, we follow the evidence, and we do not look away when the details don't add up. Today, we're turning the floor over to independent investigators who have spent the last 6 weeks doing the kind of granular review the Jackson County Sheriff's Office has yet to make public, enhancing photographs, tracking distinguishing details, mapping boat positions, and holding the official timeline up against what the footage actually shows. If you're new here, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. Now, let's look at the tape. Before we get into the frame by frame, we need the baseline, because a single detail, a red pair of shorts, doesn't mean anything without the full context around it. Nolan Wells was 18 years old, a wide receiver at Southwest Mississippi Community College, 3 weeks from his 19th birthday. He didn't drive, which meant his friends picked him up, every time, without exception, a routine built on years of trust. On July 4th, he got on a boat with those friends and rowed 10 miles out to Horn Island for the holiday, about as ordinary a day as an 18-year-old on the Mississippi coast could have. He never came home. For 6 weeks, the public has largely been given one version of events. The boat took on water. Nolan chose to stay behind to spend time with a girl named Katie. His friends reportedly left him on the beach around 4:30 p.m., believing he was safe, and only realized hours later that he hadn't returned. That account came from the young men themselves, seated beside a defamation attorney who has publicly threatened legal action against people discussing the case online. It came from a sheriff's office that stated there was no foul play before the autopsy had even concluded. It came from a system that ultimately handed a grieving mother a sealed report containing one word, undetermined. But while attorneys were issuing public statements, a different kind of review was happening quietly, in the background. Independent investigators, with no legal authority, no subpoena power, no PR team, began working through the raw footage, adjusting exposure on blurry stills, cross-referencing where each person sat on each boat, comparing identifying details, like jewelry, across different pieces of footage. It's slow, unglamorous work, but it's real scrutiny, the kind a case like this deserves. And what they found raises serious questions about parts of the official timeline. A limb, visible on the floor of a boat that was supposedly calm. A figure in red shorts, on a shoreline that doesn't match the account given. A distinctive bracelet, appearing on the wrong person's wrist in different footage. And a boat, reportedly driven by someone other than its owner. We're going to walk through 5 specific anomalies right now. We'll let the investigator show you exactly what she found, frame by frame. And when she's finished, we'll hold those findings up against the legal reality of this case and ask questions that hours of televised interviews have yet to address. Stay with us. The footage speaks for itself.
I mean, he's on the phone. Wouldn't you think that you would have seen Nolan on the bottom of on the floor or something? Or scrambling around, or everybody in a pot, like in a small space on the boat looking at him or something. I mean, that you...
What an absolute wild thing to say when so many people have seen this video and slowed it down and noticed that there's either like a hand or a foot or something that comes flying up when they tug on the toe right there. Like, I can't believe that they said that. But please, please, please put out this interview. Please give me something to tear apart. Y'all, I swear I see Warren stop breathing when he starts this sentence, and he doesn't move again until he closes it out. Watch. They try to cover it up with an edit.
On the phone, wouldn't you think that you would have seen Nolan on the bottom of on the floor or something? Or scrambling around, or everybody in a pot, like in a small space on the boat looking at him or something. I mean, that...
Let's go through a speed run of the information. We can now definitively say that this is Jax. We can also now definitively say that this is Morgan. He's wearing the same hat as well as the same bracelets. So where were they on the Triton? Now that we've got a much clearer video thanks to Officer Tatum, it's obvious that there is nobody in an orange swimsuit or a paisley swimsuit on this boat. We also barely see that there's somebody here in the red shorts. Now, in this Katie Snapchat picture, I've been saying that there was somebody in the background here wearing red shorts. So I pumped up the exposure, and as you can see, it certainly looks like it. They seemingly have similar body types as well as similar hairlines. We also know that whoever was in the red shorts was also on the shoreline when the fight broke out. Now, who was involved in that fight? Warren's brother, Carter. Carter, who trains in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And by Warren's own admission, his brother put someone in an arm bar. And in case you don't know what that looks like, go ahead and look at that placement on the back of the head there. Spot look familiar? Given Carter's height, build, body type, this looks like it could be him. But one blurry, underexposed picture is not solid proof of anything, right? But we know Warren grabbed his younger brother and had him come over hang out with them on their boat as they were sinking or whatever. And it would be pretty bad for their case if this was Carter on the Triton and then on Katie's boat at 6 o'clock. But now my attention turns to this person who a lot of people think is Bart. But in his hand, he is holding a cell phone. So I thought, why would Bart jump from his boat to the other boat holding a cell phone when other people have cell phones in their hands while Wyatt is on the phone in the picture? So while I was trying to compare pictures of Bart to the person on the boat that I can't identify, I found this picture with him with a tattoo from about 2 years ago. And it wasn't until just today that I stopped looking at the tattoo and I started looking at his wrist. Because someone in the background of this picture has always stuck out to me, because my instinct always was like, is that Bart? Bart seemingly has a pretty pronounced mullet, as according to this picture. But this was definitely not on Bart's boat. I checked the seating and the covers, like it's not Bart's boat. Now, I think you pretty much get where I'm going with this, because then I remembered this bracelet. Pretty unique bracelet. Unique like the bracelet that Bart Jr. was wearing in that tattoo picture. And right here looks like it might be the tail end of a tattoo that wraps around the forearm, right in the same place that it would be on Bart. I've said for a while now that the story about them calling Bart that morning to go out on the boat never made sense, because what 21-year-old didn't already have plans for 4th of July? So then the question is, who is driving Bart's boat? Which brings me back to this guy who some people have thought looked like Bart. However, we do know that he was on Bart's boat handing out drinks to people in that 7-second clip we've seen. Same hair, same glasses, same hat. By the way, did y'all know that Bart has a younger brother? The family resemblance is very striking. I mean, the real difference is that he's a little bit shorter and has a squarer jaw. And does anybody want to guess what his younger brother's name is? Brooks. Now, I seem to remember, and I can't remember exactly the context, a certain somebody talking in an interview about his buddy Brooks. Here's your reminder to check out my bio if you want to support my work. Folks, I have really outdone myself because I'm sure you're here wanting my take on part 2 of the interview, but we're not going to talk about that. Trust me, you're gonna want to be sad. Thanks to this interview, I was able to finally, definitively put faces and names together, and then it hit me. We now know for sure that this is Jax, and now we know for sure that this is Morgan. He's literally wearing the same hat and the exact same armbands. So why aren't they on the Triton? A very unique blue swimsuit and an orange and yellow swimsuit. And now, thanks to Officer Tatum, we finally have a very clear video of them calling for the sea tow. And, I don't see an orange swimsuit anywhere. I don't see a paisley swimsuit anywhere. So where are Jax and Morgan on this boat? We see what looks like Jax cuddling up to Katie on Bart's boat. So is this Bart over on their boat? Because here he was in that video handing out beers from his boat, and the sunglasses and the hat look the same. But what if it's not? Just stick with me, I'm going to come back around to it. Because now I want to talk about Warren's 17-year-old brother, Carter. Carter, who we know got into a fight with someone and put someone in an armbar on the shore. Carter, who Warren said he told to come over and hang out with all of them and chill out. Carter, who practices Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Notice the hand placement. And if you're like me, I had to go look up and see what an armbar exactly is and how it is done. And oh, look at the placement of that arm. Yeah. Now this seems to me like it definitely could be Carter. Picture was just taken in December, so the haircut, the hairline, the body type, all of it. We also know that the person in the red shorts were on the shore when the fight happened. Now, y'all remember this picture, the Katie Snapchat pictures? Well, I brightened it up. All I did was just pump up the exposure, nothing else. And look in the background here. Oh, red shorts, just like I said. Lighter colored hair with a very familiar looking back of the neck. Now, of course, I'm not saying whether this is or isn't Carter. Boy, this wouldn't look good for anybody if this is Carter on Katie's boat at 6:02. But you know, one underexposed, blurry picture a smoking gun does not make. Unless somebody with a very unique haircut and a very distinct piece of jewelry happens to show up in one of these pictures. Because Mullet Boy here has always bothered me because for some reason he's wearing what looks like jeans. Not saying they are jeans, just can't definitively prove one way or the other whether they are or not, or if it's just the design of the swim trunks. When I went back through some of the photos I had collected of Bart Jr. to try and figure out if this was him or not, I found this picture I had archived. Thanks to the tattoo in this picture, which is the reason I screen grabbed it, that's why I'm like, I don't think this is Bart, because I feel like I would see the tattoo there, but and mind you, this picture is a couple of years old, but I just kind of wanted a timeline for this tattoo for identification purposes. And then I stopped getting distracted by the tattoo on his arm, and I looked at the bracelet on his wrist. Pretty unique set of bracelets, right? I mean, hopefully by now you've figured out where I'm going with this. Why, what a unique set of bracelets. So between the mullet and these bracelets, someone may come to the conclusion that Katie and Bart were on a boat together. Maybe not Bart's boat, because after all, they're claiming that this boat belonged to a Marty McGrath, who's the one who came and got people. But if that's Bart here, then who was driving Bart's boat? Did you guys know that Bart has a younger brother? Very similar looking, but I'll tell you what, very different jawlines. Almost like the jawline of this person on the Triton. And guess what his brother's name is? Brooks. Now, where have I heard that before? Hasn't somebody talked about my buddy Brooks in previous interviews? I always said the whole "we called Bart that morning" story didn't make fucking sense. I have a theory that I'm fleshing out. But thanks for doing this interview, guys. Wouldn't have been able to figure this out without you. But you know, since we're all liars and grifters anyway, just a reminder to everybody to check out my link in my bio if you want to support my work. I told you that lawyer was giving away the game when he kept saying just their three names over and over again. What do you mean it's a quote from a mob movie?
Because if you don't do that, once you're in court, now you just can't leave.
Now you just can't leave.
Maybe if you're trying to convince the general public that these boys are innocent, don't quote a mob movie in which they then beat up a bunch of bikers at a bar. And it seems quite obvious to me that this lawyer, instead of, presenting evidence that would help exonerate them in the public eye, like showing the actual security cam footage of when they came home or the text messages with Katie. No. Instead, we're going to keep it focused on race, which you can see by this clip.
People are pushing the narrative of, oh, this is a race thing. Well, obviously it's not. I mean, this is like a brother to us. I mean, Nolan's no different than anyone else in our group. I think it's so criminal that they took something so anti-racist and flipped it into something super racist. Like they took, this is the definition of anti-racism. I mean, that we did not look at Nolan any different than I looked at him, or even you.
Okay, first off, that even you was wild. It's quite clear from that sentence that Jax has never had an actual conversation about racism in his entire life. I was friends with a black person. That's the most anti-racist anybody's ever been. This situation was the most unracist thing that's ever existed. It's the media. They're the ones making this racist. No, you don't understand what that means. It means your story doesn't hold water, and when people called you out on it and called out the investigation on not even investigating, that is systematic racism. It's very, very clear to me that the lawyer is the one telling them to keep the focus on race. Because you can see the lawyer and the gears in his head turning and nodding and agreeing along with all of the racial stuff. And you can see him kind of being like, yeah, okay, that's what I'm saying, yeah. So it's very clear that that was one of the bullet points that the lawyer told them to hit home over. And another one was the Coast Guard. Why would I call the Coast Guard if I knew he was dead? I called the Coast Guard right away. First off, you didn't. You waited till 11 o'clock. Second, it's not like the Coast Guard searched for him that night. Warren clung to that like it was a safety raft.
I think from the beginning, I'm glad that I called the Coast Guard. It would have been completely different. I'm glad I called the Coast Guard.
It's like, I'm sorry, Warren, but it's actually way more suspicious that you called the Coast Guard. Because first, you didn't want to call the Coast Guard when you guys were sinking. And then for some reason, you assumed that Nolan was still out on the island at 11 o'clock at night. Why wouldn't you assume that he came back with the person he was supposed to come back with and something happened to him in transit? Because no reasonable person would think that he was still out on the island, in my opinion. Because in your own words, Warren, you said you didn't talk to Katie till the next day. And then speaking of the island, the lawyer tries to say that by them going to the island and looking around, that it absolutely exonerates them and that the narrative couldn't be this, and ends it with a wild statement, mind you.
People who have been sucking up way more oxygen than they're entitled to have not been to the island. I'm willing to bet that a lot of the hustlers and profiteers and liars have not been to that island. And you have to go to that island. And being at the island today was revelatory. It was really illuminating. It's a very dynamic marine environment, first of all. But when you go to the island, you see instantly that what some people want to be true, what they wish to be true, they're trying to wish it to be true. They're trying to make it true through their lives. It's actually not possible. It is a very, very long and narrow barrier island. It's basically very low sand dunes. And the particular part of the island that we're dealing with, there are no trees. It's hardly any foliage, hardly any tree cover, hardly any plants, and it's wide open. And on July 4th, there were thousands of people there. There is no possible way that anybody could have committed a murder in broad daylight.
Murder? Who's saying anything about a murder? Most of us are under the assumption that an accident happened and they covered it up. All of this stuff that they keep trying to point to as evidence that they didn't do anything to him are not actually evidence. You know what is evidence? The security cam footage. Explain to us why the grandfather was the one who canceled the sea tow. How about that? And what I see is just a complete lack of responsibility with these boys. Because listen to this phrasing.
I wish we would have never, I think about this every day. I wish we would have never went out on the 4th of July because I know this wouldn't have happened.
You see, instead of saying, I should have made sure my friend got home safely, they said, I wish we had never gone out. And I have to admit, my little antennas buzzed a little when it sounded like he was going to say, I knew this was going to happen, right? That seems like what he was going to say. It wasn't, maybe we shouldn't have been underage drinking. They literally say, we did everything right.
I mean, there's not much I would change from my point of view and my friend's point of view. I think we did everything right, and I know we did nothing wrong.
Those are not the words of somebody who lost their brother, their best friend a month ago. And I lost one of my closest friends in a non-suspicious way. I blamed myself, even though I hadn't even physically seen her in a couple of years. And for those of you guys saying that Jax is the one that people should press, I fully disagree. He is the one that I think is the scariest out of these interviews. Watch the way he looks at Warren during this moment.
We live in a very tight-knit community, and for people to, push back and say these things when they know what Ocean Springs is like, it's really hard. And I mean, I haven't had many personal encounters, but I know being around the
he felt like he was saying something to Warren. Because let's not forget, it was his grandparents' house that they all got together at. It was his grandparents' house that they went back to, and thus should have security cam footage from. And out of all of them, Jax is the one that is holding his body in a different way, who is more controlled, more level-headed. If these kids were truly looking to exonerate themselves, they would actually start addressing some of these questions, like, who was the fourth boat? Why were all of you huddled up out there together? Who drove the fucking Palm Beach? All right, let's try recording this video for the third time. First off, what in the cosplay was this lawyer doing? As if he isn't a lawyer from New York. He's just throwing on some good old boy dog whistle clothes. What I've seen so far, this was a weird interview. From the baseball signals he was giving, watching these boys as if he was their warden, and wearing a hat advertising the law firm that you're working with is weird. But this lawyer kind of proved my point a little bit when I suspected that he wasn't going to be a very good lawyer and just was actually a bully behind the scenes. Because did y'all pick up on this?
About Morgan, Jax, and Warren, I'm not going to call them untruths or half-truths or falsehoods. I'm going to call it what it is, lies. Morgan, Warren, and Jax left the island at about 4:30 p.m. That's it.
Yeah, did anybody else pick up on him constantly repeating Morgan, Jax, and Warren? Morgan, Jax, and Warren are innocent. Morgan, Jax, and Warren left at 4:30. That language is intentional. He is intentionally excluding all the other people on the boat, all the other people that went to the beach. And you might notice he conveniently left out the brother in all of this. Aren't you also representing his brother? And yet you intentionally say stuff like this.
Morgan, if you lied about Jax, if you lied about Warren, we're going to get you. And you're going to be hauled into court. You're going to be held accountable. And it's going to be very painful. And what I would say to the people who have done that is, now's your chance. If you want to apologize and retract before you find yourself in court, you should probably do that now. Because if you don't do that, once you're in court, now you just can't leave. You won't be able to get out of it. And we're not going to name names because there's some other folks who are doing that, and we want to be better than that. And I want to emphasize this, right? We're not here to guess. We're not here to speculate. We're only going to deal in facts, right? And here's the most important thing, right? We don't know how Nolan Wells died. No one here is saying we know. But what we do know is Morgan, Jax, and Warren had nothing whatsoever to do with Nolan Wells' death.
Did you see it? Did you see how they intentionally left out so many people? And I thought he drowned. It was an accident, right? Isn't it weird how in none of these interviews they're ever like, this was an awful accident. We should have made better choices that day and looked out for our friend, but in the end, he drowned. And can we just talk for a second about the weird laugh they did there? Let's show it again.
If you don't do that, once you're in court, now you just can't leave. You won't be able to get out of it.
What the hell was so funny about that? That was the mask slipping, y'all. That's how they really feel about all of this. There's no logical reason a lawyer would actually advise any of their clients to go and keep doing these interviews, because this is all just a media PR stunt. They know that they're never going to be held accountable, but they are just so worried about their name being Googleable that they're desperately trying to send up the signal to try and revamp their public image. This whole interview, in my opinion, is just the lawyer doing what I thought he would try to do and bully and intimidate people into silence. Because as someone who has gotten several cease and desists in my life, they don't give you warnings. They don't tell you, oh, you better retract it or else we're gonna then get you to court. No, a cease and desist is your warning. A warning that means nothing. Personally, I don't think there's gonna be a single person that they ever bring to court for defamation. And if anything, this lawyer repeating over and over just Morgan, Jax, and Warren implies that what he's actually saying in lawyer speak is that these are the only three with clean hands. Which is why, again, it is so weird that his brother is not included in this list. I've got a lot more to say about this interview, so I'll be making another video today for sure. But one thing I need to say is, if you really want to keep coming on here and proclaiming your innocence, why don't you actually show us the evidence that you claim that you have? Show us the text messages with Katie. Jack's buddy, go ahead and show us that security cam footage of all y'all coming home. Feels like that would be the most definitive way to shut us up, now wouldn't it? Until you do that, nobody feels bad that you can't buy a fucking Gatorade. Nolan is dead. My bad, folks. I've got to re-upload the video because I accidentally left something in it, so I had to re-edit it. But here we go. Let's try it again. This was the most bizarre good old boy cosplay I have ever seen in my life. Let's keep in mind that that Trump lawyer that they hired is from New York. And I have never seen a lawyer sit down with their clients and do an interview with them in the least professional attire I have ever seen, while also advertising another law firm on their hat. We all saw how weird this interview was, right? It was like a prison warden keeping checks on them. And not only was he doing the weird baseball signals throughout the interview, not only was he in the most defensive position out of anybody in this group, after I watched this interview, he kind of proved me right in that I think he's a bad lawyer who's using bullying tactics behind the scene, and that's what he's good at. Because did anybody else pick up on this?
About Morgan, Jax, and Warren, I'm not going to call them untruths or half-truths or falsehoods. I'm going to call it what it is, lies. Morgan, Warren, and Jax left the island at about 4:30 p.m. That's it.
Did anybody else pick up on that? That over and over again, he was specifically saying Morgan, Jax, and Warren, blah, blah, blah. They didn't do anything. They left the island at 4:30. If you're telling lies about them, you're in trouble. He's intentionally and purposely omitting everybody else that was on the boat, everybody else that was in the group that day. And that right there is very telling to me. Now, I personally do not see the logic in the lawyer advising these boys to do another interview, unless it's to try and threaten and intimidate the people that they're gonna go after for defamation. Because they keep saying this over and over again. We're gonna sue for defamation. We're gonna bring these people in and we're gonna sue them. And at one point, the lawyer even says this.
Morgan, if you lied about Jax, if you lied about Warren, we're going to get you. And you're going to be hauled into court. You're going to be held accountable. And it's going to be very painful. And what I would say to the people who have done that is, now's your chance. If you want to apologize and retract before you find yourself in court, you should probably do that now. Because if you don't do that, once you're in court, now you just can't leave. You won't be able to get out of it. And we're not going to name names because there's some other folks who are doing that, and we want to be better than that. And I want to emphasize this, right? We're not here to guess. We're not here to speculate. We're only going to deal in facts, right? And here's the most important thing, right? We don't know how Nolan Wells died. No one here is saying we know. But what we do know is Morgan, Jax, and Warren had nothing whatsoever to do with Nolan Wells' death.
Once again, being overly specific and giving away the game. Oh, if you lie about Morgan and Jax and Warren, we're gonna haul you into court. We don't know anything, but Morgan, Jax, and Warren are innocent. But I thought he drowned. Aren't they all innocent? Isn't it all just a terrible accident? Notice how not once has anybody in any of these interviews said that this was just a tragic accident. And mind you, if they were actually being defamed, those letters would have been sent out. They wouldn't go and give an interview warning people, you better retract it or then we're gonna come for you. As someone who has had several cease and desist letters sent to them, they don't warn you. Because cease and desist letters in themselves don't matter. They aren't anything. They are the warning. What was that weird fucking laugh they all had together?
Once you're in court, now you just can't leave. You won't be able to get out of it.
That was the mask slipping. That was them showing us who they really are. I've got a ton more I want to say about this interview so far, but I think it's important that we need to keep the pressure on because look at Warren is crumbling. He's literally wearing the same shirt that he wore in the last interview when they went to the island, and just look at the difference. Personally, I think it's important that if we are going to be giving Officer Tatum the views on these videos, that we need to be expressing our opinions in the comment section, not fighting with people. And I can't help but wonder why Warren's brother was left out of all of those proclamations. Just something to think about.
So let me ask what I am allowed to ask. Why did the phrase "no foul play" leave a sheriff's office before a medical examiner had...
Before we go further into this, if you're new to Cold Case Watch Central, this is what we do. We don't chase theories. We don't rush to a verdict before the evidence is in. We ask the questions the official record hasn't answered yet, and we stay on a case until someone with real authority does. If that's the kind of coverage you want more of, subscribe and turn on notifications. We'll be tracking this one through the grand jury, through the report, through whatever comes next. Now, back to the questions nobody's answering. Those statements. Just something worth sitting with. So let me ask what I'm actually allowed to ask. Why did the words "no foul play" leave a sheriff's office before the medical examiner had even finished the examination? Not after, before. Who made the call that a sentence like that was ready for public release? And what evidence did they actually have in front of them when they said it? And if there truly was no foul play, why did that same office later ask the public to send in unedited footage of altercations on the island? Sit with that one for a second, because those two positions cannot both be true at the same time. Two separate medical examiners have now reviewed this case. One paid for by the state, one paid for out of pocket, by his own mother, because she wasn't confident the state would tell her the full picture. Two examinations. Both returned the same word, undetermined. So here's the question worth asking. What does undetermined actually mean in Jackson County, Mississippi in 2026? Does it mean the science genuinely ran out of answers? Or does it mean someone looked at where the science was pointing and decided that word was the safer one to release? The state's report has reportedly been complete since the end of July. As of this recording, it has not been made public. The district attorney's office states that every death in the county goes before a grand jury, that this is standard procedure, that this is simply how it's done. Fair enough. Then here's the follow-up. Whose interest does that procedure actually protect? Because as of this recording, it is not protecting Christine Wansley. She is now 5 weeks past being handed a sealed envelope with her son's name on it. Procedure exists for good reason, when it stands between the public and a rush to judgment. It becomes something very different when it stands between a mother and the final hours of her son's life. 60 witnesses interviewed. The FBI reportedly involved in the digital evidence review. That is not the footprint of a case being treated as routine. So which is it? Is this the nothing that was announced in week 1? Or is it the something that 60 interviews and a federal digital forensics request would suggest? Ask yourself why an 18-year-old wasn't in possession of his own phone that night. Ask what a phone like that would actually be able to tell investigators. Ask who has reviewed that data, when they reviewed it, and what they found. Ask why the person publicly identified as the last one with him has, 6 weeks later, still not spoken publicly. Ask why the loudest voices attached to this case have been attorneys, not investigators, not the medical examiner. Attorneys. Ask who benefits when the public conversation shifts from a young man's death to a lawsuit over comments made online. And ask the question underneath all of it. If the circumstances of this case were reversed, if the roles were flipped, would this file still be sealed today? Would no foul play have been announced this quickly? Would anyone be telling that mother to simply be patient? We're not going to answer that for you. We are not going to tell you what happened on Horn Island on July 4th, because we don't know, and neither does anyone claiming certainty from behind a screen. Here's what we do know. The grand jury has not returned a decision. The full report has not been released. The phone has not been explained. The mother has not been given answers. This case is not closed. It is not solved. It remains open. And it stays open on this channel until someone with actual authority tells that woman how her son died. Until then, the only honest thing any of us can say is, we don't know yet, and we're not going anywhere.